War for Paradis is cinema. It really is. All of it even. It completely gave Attack on Titan its one arc. I'm sure every anime and manga always has that one arc that a majority of people see as the greatest in their respective story. One Piece has Marineford, Naruto has the Pain arc, and Hunter x Hunter has the Chimera arc, while Attack on Titan has War for Paradis. Undoubtedly one of the greatest arcs of all time, and you could really say it's one of the greatest final arcs of all time, side by side with Gintama's Silver Soul and Ashita no Joe's final arc. All three of these arcs all did the same thing to the audience, completely placing them in shock, giving them some amazing emotional peaks, and also, well, changing their perspective on the story. War for Paradis basically did all of that, especially that third part. Damn. This arc is a long and intense ride, and I want to go ahead and talk about it, so let's get right into it. The profound yet steady build up this arc has is something that it definitely needed before it had begun to kick off. The Survey Corps just finished undertaking their operation in Mali and had returned with a few losses. 8 deaths confirmed, but comparing that to how much they did to Mali, it was a huge victory. Well, in Flock's eyes at least. They lost Sasha, which would make the 104th not celebrate as the rest of the Survey Corps did. They're heartbroken at the loss of their friends, angry at how Eren wrapped them up into this operation, and confused on what his motives really are. A majority of the Survey Corps are disoriented. They don't know what Eren, Zeke, or Yelena are thinking, and they slowly start to lose trust in Eren, a friend that they had had for years. The atmosphere surrounding the story is slowly becoming more and more intense, and it not only leaves the characters in the story completely confused about what's going on, but also the audience, creating a sense of connection and same emotions between the characters and us, the readers. All we know now is that Eren and Zeke would be separated and put into locations that would suspend them from each other until the rest of Paradis can settle with the right plan to defend themselves from Mali with the Founding Titan. Eren is in jail for the start of the arc, locked away, but with the Warhammer Titan abilities, he isn't completely imprisoned and away from freedom. This whole section is the main build up till Eren escapes, talks to Armin and Mikasa, and as well as the Levi and Zeke fight. The tension is rising here. Ideas are being brought up again about feeding Zeke to Historia and continuing the Founding Titan cycle for many years. Eren is also desperate for another way of doing things. He begs Hanji, asking if there's another way, then tell him what it is right now. Eren lets out his suppressed emotions, clearly showing that he's desperate. You can even see Titan marks grow on him in this state. He's angry, miserable, but still on top of all that, he proceeds to keep moving forward. He knows about the end of the path, but he just needs ways to make it there. He completely manipulated Zeke and Yelena to get on his side, convinced Flock to round up people to join him, and took down most of Mali's soldiers to save time. He dreads the end, but he still makes his way to do what he must do. He has to do it. His goals are set, but Eren is still worried whether his friends would die while he's going down this path. Shockingly, Sasha had died, and of course he felt really guilty about it, showing a similar reaction to how he acted at Hans' death. He's in the dark about how his friends would be affected, and he's pretty much scared because of that. One of the goals that he has is to make sure they live long lives, so of course he would make sure they wouldn't get too wrapped up in his actions. So the next step he takes after escaping his jail cell would be to talk to his 2 childhood friends and make sure to keep them away from him as much as possible, even if he has to say things that he doesn't mean in any way. A few flashbacks also appear around the start of the arc that gives us some knowledge of Mikasa's ancestry, how Zeke and the volunteers met up with Paradis, Eren protecting Historia from going on with the Founding Titan cycle, and of course the flashback of Eren telling his friends that he wishes for them to live long lives. In the present, the 104th have their own conversation on Eren's new behavior. They have no clue what Eren's thinking, and they're even questioning if Zeke is controlling Eren at the moment. That's how far he has gone from his usual self to them. Connie even talks about cutting him down themselves, showing no hesitation when saying this as well. His eyes are dead set on doing that. Eren is long gone for them, and now all they see is a person who sends his friends to the battlefield, all the while keeping things hidden from them. Of course, we, the audience, have a feeling that this ain't all too right. Eren had always had trouble trusting people to protect him. The Levi Squad incident definitely gave a severe blow to his mindset on the matter, and he had trouble having to believe in the soldiers that fight alongside him. But this had all changed in the Uprising arc, when he had learned to not put his Titan powers on a pedestal and always think that he's the one who should always do things himself. And we see this development work at the start of Return to Shiganshina, with him changing his words from "I can do it" to "we can do it." Because from the day we were born, there was something special about all of us. We're free. Having this knowledge with us, Eren couldn't possibly just send his friends to their deaths in Mali. He trusted them to fight and win. He's not the same Eren from before the Uprising arc, but someone with full capabilities of working with the people he loves. But after the Mali arc, the 104th's trust they had in Eren falls. Mikasa and Armin are literally the only ones left who still have hope in Eren and plan to discuss with him so they can find out what his true motives are and prove to everyone that Eren is still on their side. Everything is slowly closing in at this point of the story. The audience really wants the EMA conversation to happen and also wants to hear about Eren's true motives. Apart from that, Gabi and Falco are being introduced to the new world of Paradis. Unknown of the true people that live there, Gabi still hates every last one of the so-called island devils, whilst Falco understands that everyone on the island is just the same as him and the other Eldians in Mali, as well as the Malians themselves. He had learned this from hearing Eren's conversation with Reiner and understood everything about what Eren had said about the people within the walls and over the sea. They're all the same. Gabi on the other hand hasn't understood that fact yet, as she completely mutilates one of the guards that had actually decided to try and help her. She hates the island devils and insists on not changing that mindset on the island itself, even when helped by them. The two of them eventually run into the Blouse family, where they would stay for the time being before meeting with Niccolo, a Malian just like themselves. A bit later, after Gabi and Falco are adapting to the new environment, Eren's operation finally starts. It begins with Zackley getting bombed from the inside of his office by the Yeagerists, and afterward the crowd shouting "Devote your heart," showing the lens of the Yeagerists' influence upon the people of Paradis. And around this time, Eren has had enough of waiting for any other option and sets himself free using the Warhammer Titan's powers, joining up with Flock and his crew and setting their sights on Zeke's location. While all of this is happening though, Mali has already secretly invaded Paradis, as we can shockingly see Peak perfectly disguised in the crowd. Everything is all set at this point. The build up has shown us that everyone other than Eren and Zeke are out of the loop. They have no idea what to do and are only scrambling for desperate ideas on how to solve this major problem. The Malian volunteers are getting secured, as the high-ups don't trust them at all. Everyone at this point is dreading Mali's counterattack, but also is enraged at Eren and the Yeagerists' behavior. It's intense and filled with mixed emotions. The clock is ticking and the path is unknown to anyone, even Eren. I love this build up, and of course it can only be enhanced by what's afterward. Commander Pixies brings up the idea of surrendering to Eren's group so they can hold a conversation with them. Everyone's in the dark about who's a rat in the military and are Yeagerists, so he holds the idea to negotiate first and avoid conflict with each other. It's a cheap price to pay for him to surrender, but he still can't guarantee everything will turn out with no harm done. The story then transitions to Gabi and Falco's side. This is the section where they run into Niccolo and everything goes south from here. Upon meeting Niccolo, they're excited and happy that there's someone just like them here on the island. Around the time they're at the restaurant, the Survey Corps enter as well, and this is pretty much how the wine plot starts up. Niccolo takes the wine away from John, and with them having no idea what's happening, they think it's just an act of discrimination. The wine with Zeke's spinal fluid would only be used to manipulate the MPs and make sure they wouldn't choose to take control of the situation themselves. Zeke actually screaming for the wine to take action inside of the MPs would only be a last-ditch attempt, and not something to be used straight away. Eren was probably hesitant of the idea, as we can see him telling Zeke to wait when he was about to scream. Zeke is actually the one who shows full resolve in what he plans to do and doesn't mind this idea. He completely annihilated a load of Survey Corps members in Return to Shiganshina and turned Connie's village into Titan Town, so of course he's ready to do something similar. Only a select few know of the wine, while the rest of the volunteers or Yeagerists are in the dark about it. Back to Gabi and Falco meeting with Niccolo, we see how the conflict begins from there. An act of revenge is held after Niccolo realizes that Gabi is the one who had killed Sasha, and he continues that violence. This is where one of my favorite themes in the story is brought up. Children of the Forest. The theme is brought up by Mr. Blouse after Niccolo tries to attack Gabby. It correlates well with the cycle of hatred and is able to explore this theme through characters that are affected by this major problem. As people are affected by war and conflict, they enter the forest of violence and hatred, putting your enemies down and repeating it. The same things would happen again and again with no one to guide them out of the forest, and if you wandered too long in it, you could find yourself dead, which was what had happened to Sasha and many more people in the world of Attack on Titan. You could really line this up with multiple characters in AOT, which this theme works really well with. We also know that a way to break free from this cycle or forest is by loving something. Niccolo had done this at first with Sasha loving his cooking, and he loved that. It showed us that a literal Malian could get out of the forest. Someone who was brainwashed from birth could do it. It may sound cheesy, but that's how it's done. We can also see this with Grisha as well. Kruger had told Grisha to love someone in the walls and make a family, and if he can't, then they're doomed to repeat it all again. The same history, the same mistakes, again and again. Kruger's words are real and show Grisha a path out of the forest. Grisha hugging Zeke is also a major thing of how this theme is used. Zeke finally feels the love of his real father, and this moment is important for how his conclusion happens. As he says in his last lines, "What a beautiful day it is. If only I'd realized it sooner." He exits the forest and cycle of hatred at that point to realize the beauty of life, and he loves it in the last few seconds that he has. Sorry, but one last example of how this theme is incorporated into the story is actually Historia loving her child in the ending. As we know, parents in Attack on Titan are always not too stable, and with them being like that, their kids are eventually thrown into the forest of violence and hatred. In Historia's child's case, she is brought up in a loving way, as well as the Titan curse not being in the world anymore. This is another example of how escaping the cycle of hatred is used in the story. So yeah, one of my favorite themes. Now onto the EMA talk. Now this is the section of the arc that everyone was probably waiting for when reading the manga. We were all interested in seeing how this conversation would go down because before we hadn't really seen the three of them talk after the time skip. They had only just exchanged a few words in the Battle of Mali, but now we get to see them have a full-on discussion. Gabby is also there for the talk, but she's just used as a way to show the audience that of course after everything Eren says or does in this conversation, he still cares about his friends, because the only way he refers to Gabby is by calling her the brat who killed Sasha. It shows us that Sasha's death still affects him and also on his mind every time he sees Gabby. He cares about his friends, so we know the things that he says that hurts Armin or Mikasa were basically lies. But of course, we all know that was obvious. Everything that was used against them, specifically him telling Mikasa about the Ackerman bloodline needing a host to cling on to, was all a straight lie to push them away from him. He doesn't want them getting hurt from the things he's about to do, so eventually proceeds to say that he hates Mikasa, placing a devastating blow on their friendship. Eren having to suppress his emotions by telling them all of this with his poker face was all too sad to see, but his mask cracks by the end of the conversation after Armin calls him a slave. It's a blow that strikes hard at Eren's true self, as he indeed is kind of a slave to his own concept of freedom. That I will get into later in the video. I love how it foreshadows this, and also the story tells us that Eren isn't just a stoic quote-unquote Chad after the time skip. He's still the same Eren, just pushed to do things because of the consequences that would arise if he doesn't. He continues to move forward to that point in the future. Zeke vs Levi. Also Zeke's backstory. This whole sequence was amazing, and I love how it just wasn't Levi vs Zeke all over again, but also had Zeke's past with it as well. Here we get to see Levi's final resolve in killing his comrades. He's done it many times before, but of course didn't know they were actually humans. With that knowledge now, it hurts for him to attack the Titans that were his comrades only seconds ago. Also, Zeke showed that the wine being his spinal fluid was real and dangerous. Something that can be used against his enemies, with them having to choose whether to kill their longtime friends and comrades or not and die. This isn't just an "oh wow, Levi is so cool at taking down the Titans" moment. It hurts now knowing the truth, and we the audience don't want him to slaughter his comrades, but he does. That's his choice to survive, and yeah, he doesn't have any regrets in doing so. It's painful for him, but he has to continue and not be hesitant to do so. After he beats Zeke, I can definitely understand how badly he wants to kill him right now, but he can't. He still needs to wait for orders, but seeing him hold himself back even more, especially at this point, I totally respect Levi a lot. Zeke's in shambles after being completely annihilated by Levi, and the only thing he can see now is a vision of him playing with Dr. Cassavia in the past, which then reminds him fully of the goal that he has set out for. We're then thrown into the tragic past of Zeke Yeager and see how he became who he is for ourselves. We see Zeke being pushed into the quote-unquote forest by Grisha and Dinah, continuing the cycle of hatred. The same mistakes being repeated over and over again are shown here. They place the idea of him being the one to save everyone, and it's very forced onto him. Unlike Rhino, who wants to become a hero and wants to become an ordinary Malian, Zeke needs to become a hero to save the world and needs to become a warrior to enact the plan of getting back the Founding Titan for the Eldian Restorationists. Zeke is forced into this mission and slowly all the pressure gets to him, which is entirely understandable because his parents are literally forcing a child into a major act like this. Grisha and the Restorationists get restless over how Zeke's behavior is, as it's not meeting their expectations, which then puts pressure on them as well. It's going south for everyone, and Zeke even warns his parents not to do anything too dangerous or the family will get sent to heaven, but he only gets scolded afterward as he had brought up the incident revolving around Grisha's deceased sister. His parents hadn't loved him in any way. That's exactly why he had stumbled into the forest and walked a blood-soaked path. Meeting Dr. Casavia gave him enough power to send his parents away before his grandparents would get involved, and he became a loyal warrior to the Malians afterward. No one had suspected any rebellion from him after he did an act like that, so it was easy for him to plan everything out to save both the Eldians and the rest of the world. Zeke developed an ideology that, well, could make him save the world in his eyes. He would not only save Eldia, but the world itself from the Titans. This ideology that had forged into his mind would be making it so that every subject of Ymir wouldn't have the ability to birth more children. He believed that not being born into this world is the greatest thing possible, which is a contrast to Eren's ideals. He grew an anti-natalism outlook on life, which had stemmed from the words of Dr. Casavia being, "If only I was never born into this world." Zeke fully believes that everything he has done so far in War for Paradis was right. He believed that he had saved everyone he killed. The violent, hate-filled world had twisted his view on life so that he could even kill his own comrades with no hesitation. Zeke is the result of this hate-filled world, and he continues it through more violence just to achieve the goal of ridding any future Eldian or current Eldians of their misery. He blows himself up along with Levi, showing just how determined he is to enact his goal. Zeke is an amazing antagonistic force. His contrast with Eren is great, and his whole character arc is compelling from knowing about his past. Soul Salvation completely enhances Zeke's character by giving us an idea of how he correlates with the themes of the story, the characters, and what he plans to do to the world of Attack on Titan. You could really hate someone like him, but because of how he was brought up and gained a twisted outlook on life because of his past environment, you can't help but sympathize with him. Zeke is a victim, unlike Eren, who was completely free. Grisha even told him this when he was born, and I really bet that he didn't say that to Zeke. Eren was Grisha's fresh start, and he did well for the most part at least, until, you know. The events that would happen after Zeke blew himself up would lead to the second short little build-up towards Mali invading Shiganshina. The volunteers and the Yeagerists have taken control over the place, and Zeke has begun to rise back up. He had seen the paths that would make us, the readers, curious to actually know what these paths actually are. We saw them first in the backstory of Ymir Freckles, where she called them freedom and a sign of her rebirth. For Zeke, he had been regenerated there with the help of Ymir Fritz herself. It felt like it had been years for him there, but it was over in an instant. This use of uncertainty gives us more questions on what this place really is, and it would only be explained later on in this arc. In Shiganshina, Eren is being pretty cautious and goes to Gabby for her to help him try and flush out any spies, but once again he refers to her as the brat who killed Sasha. As he does say this though, a disguised Peak makes her move and kills the guard right next to her and Eren, then points a gun straight at him. She can't kill him though, and Eren knows this, so she then proceeds to try and get on his side, telling Eren that she proved that she's on his side by pointing out the enemy. While all of this is happening, the 104th are locked up just like the MPs. The Yeagerists and volunteers have taken over Shiganshina and are waiting for Eren and Zeke to finally come in contact. Connie still hates Eren, while John thinks that he may have a hidden motive, because after hearing about Eren beating Armin to a pulp, he doesn't truly think Eren in his right mind would do something like that to his childhood friend. All he knows is that something has been up with Eren's actions and they don't seem too real. While all of them continue to talk in their cells, Peak, Eren, and Gabby have made it onto the roof so that the enemy could now be revealed. And yep, Peak points at Eren, referring to him as the true enemy, and that starts off with Marley's counterattack. with Porco coming from below Eren, and with the Jaws Titan goes for a severe blow. This part of the arc shows a full-on war going on in Shiganshina. Both sides are going all out, but Mali has the advantage with their sneak attack. This is just pure hype, and it's great to see everyone coming together again to face the enemies, as the 104th are broken out of their cells as well. Amazing stuff would occur from this, such as Eren vs Reiner and Porco, Zeke arriving at the battle, and just Eren showing how determined he is to get to Zeke by literally bullying everyone around him. And then we get to Two Brothers, an emotional chapter that shows the relationship of three pairs of brothers, and it would only end in a tragedy. Eren and Zeke are starting to get beaten by everyone, and at this point, Zeke has had enough. He needs to scream and unleash the Titans. The wine being his spinal fluid was real as shown in the Levi fight, so knowing about how Falco has it inside of him is devastating for not just Colt but to the readers as well. Zeke hesitates to scream after finding out about this, and we even see Eren telling him to wait, which just shows that they really do care. But in Zeke's words, it is truly a shame, as he can't back down from his goal right here, and he screams. We also get Porco seeing his brother's memories and realizing that his brother had always protected him, which is why he hadn't become a warrior at first. This pushes him to have enough strength to walk out of his Titan and sacrifice himself for Falco, as he had gained his answer. Porco gets eaten, Colt is dead, Reiner is mad, and Eren makes his move. He runs towards Zeke as he hardens his Titans to secure Reiner in his place. This is probably one of the most intense moments in this arc, and the anime did it complete justice. I held my breath through this whole sequence, and it's just amazing. Gabby takes her shot and hits. She literally takes no misses, man. Eren's head gets shot off, and the story shows us a shocking spread of it flying off of his body, but it all comes down to Zeke afterward as he catches his brother's head. The memory shards that come after show us memories Eren has. It's a fantastic mix and brings forth the mystery of where some of these show up in the story. And then, finally, we enter the Paths. The Paths, a place where time is irrelevant and conflicting, a place where titans are made, and a place where Ymir the founder has been for 2,000 years. Eren has made it. He has made it to where his goal could finally be made to work, and make sure to get to that point in the future. Inside of the Paths, Zeke and Eren begin to talk, and Eren reveals that all this time he had tricked Zeke only to make it here, also saying that he has been this way since the day he was born. Grisha didn't do anything to influence his actions now, unlike Zeke. He tells Zeke that he could never go along with a plan that messed up. It's something that goes against his ideals, and I'm sure everyone knew this. But Eren surely comes to realize he isn't in control of this realm, and Zeke takes the reins with his royal blood, sending him and Eren down into Grisha's memories, hoping to fix Eren while doing so. But like we all know, Eren has been this way ever since he was born. As we go through these memories, we see Grisha loving his family and loving his new environment. This isn't like how he raised Zeke in Mali, and it's a sign of a fresh start for him. He uses love as a way to not send his new child into the forest where the cycle of hatred brews, and Zeke finally learns this as he keeps going. We then learn that Grisha hadn't gone to get the founding titan straight away. He chose to love his family over violence at first, but due to the mission he was given by the owl, he must do it, so eventually he does it years later. And this is where we get to one of the greatest moments, not just in Attack on Titan, but also in all of manga. Grisha begs for the King of the Wolves to use their powers to protect the people of Paradis, but unfortunately, due to the vow to renouncing the war made by Karl Fritz, Freda can't agree with Grisha and help out the people of the Wolves. They must face judgment in their eyes and accept the world's rage. This is a twisted outlook that Eren can't accept in any way, so we see his anger displayed in the panel. While we also see Zeke saying that he could get along with this person, showing their contrast once again. Moments afterward, Grisha reveals the true ability of the Attack Titan. The Attack Titan is capable of seeing into the memories of its future inheritors, but this isn't all too right. Yes, they can see the future, but only if the future inheritor allows that. The true ability of the Attack Titan is that the users can send their current memories back to the past users, which is how Grisha had known of the scenery Eren had seen in the rumbling, and how Kruger knew about Armin and Mikasa. Eren sends his memories back to Grisha, which is how he was able to do the act that he does shortly. He influences a fallen Grisha. Grisha doesn't want to hurt children, he's a doctor, and succumbs to his own guilt, but standing behind him is his son, who proceeds to then influence him from the future. This moment is amazing and one of the greatest plot twists I've ever seen. I had chills everywhere when reading this for the first time, and I still get them after reading it for the 100th time. After being influenced by Eren, Grisha proceeds to kill the Reese family, but only leaves one left. We then learn that Eren is about to do something terrifying, and it will all go his way now. I love this intensity shown, and it pretty much doesn't stop, but we get a small pause with Grisha telling Zeke that he loves him. And this right here makes it the first time Zeke had ever felt love from his real father. It's a crucial moment for both Grisha and Zeke's characters, and it works as a way to enhance Zeke's conclusion later on in the arc. This whole entire path section is a way to set up the rumbling and shows us what Eren truly is planning as he tells Ymir that he will bring an end to this world. But this line right here was kind of misunderstood by people, and of course I was one of the many who misunderstood this line. People had thought that Eren would bring an end to the outside world with the rumbling, but what he's saying is that he means to put an end to the world of the paths plus the titans, as when he had touched Ymir, he realizes the person Ymir has been waiting for that could help do so. At this point, a new goal comes up for Eren that he goes for alongside getting to the freedom spread. He plans to free Ymir by getting to the point where Mikasa kills him. What Eren realizes is that she has been waiting there for 2,000 years just for someone. And as we know, that someone is a person who surpassed their own trauma and was able to kill their loved one, being able to show that their love was real. That person was Mikasa. As we are shown through the Ymir flashback, Ymir Fritz has a very traumatic life. She was a slave, used as a scapegoat, and then forced to use the very power she gained for herself to be used for the king. She also developed Stockholm Syndrome, which is an emotional response to how the king treated her throughout her life. Serving King Fritz is her meaning in life, and she couldn't surpass that, but Mikasa did on the other hand for her supposed love. It's sad that Ymir had to go through all of that, and this twisted love forces her to stay in the paths and not gain any freedom. All of this also calls back to how love is used to break out of the cycle, and I love how Isayama stays consistent with that theme. It shows us by the end of the series that Mikasa's love was real, as she had killed Eren and broke any unhealthy attachment, which Ymir had learned from this, setting her free. It's beautiful, and I really didn't expect this storyline to happen, but it worked and it strengthened both Ymir and Mikasa's characters in the story. So I kind of went into talking about Ymir's full character arc in this section of the video, but let's take a look now at after Eren gains the Founding Titan's powers. Now this section of War for Paradis was straight up horrifying. We're in the endgame now and anything could happen. The stakes are really high and everyone is starting to come together, both Eldians and Malians. The alliance is formed, but it isn't without its starting troubles. Obviously they all can't trust each other at first and get into disagreements, but in the end they start to understand each other's perspectives much more. From here, Reiner's character arc also concludes. At first, he wanted to be judged, which was in the Mali arc, but here in this arc, he is understood by the other 104th members, and they realize they can't blame him for the actions he has done. They're the same, and even if they can't be redeemed for any of the actions they've committed, they can still save what's left of the world together. They accept each other, especially Reiner, who accepts their help. The rumbling section of the arc also showed the Alliance trying to come to terms with killing their old friends, who have joined the Yeagerists. Floch would be an easy target being who he is though, but the rest, it makes people like Armin and Connie have a hard time to kill. This conflict is great but truly tragic as we have to see them accepting that the world is this cruel once again and killing their old friends. Now we move on to the horrors of the rumbling. It's terrorizing and flooding everywhere with fear, uneasiness, and dread. These are the end times and Attack on Titan doesn't hold back when showing the horrors of Eren's goal. Oh, and also, let's talk about Eren's outlook on everything about this. Eren has planned everything to get to this point, unaware of the path he'll take, but he was confident that he'll meet with his true freedom, the freedom that he had wanted deep down inside of him. Everything was set in stone, but it doesn't matter for him because him doing all of this, he would have done it anyway. He doesn't hold a true reason to why he would have done it, but it's just because he was born this way. He didn't have a reason why he was pushing towards freedom so hard early in the story. Of course, it was to take back humanity's freedom, but Eren has a very unhealthy obsession with it, and he always said it was because he was born into this world whenever someone asked him. Eren also said that he always had strength welling up inside of him whenever he thought about taking freedom back. Eren had an unhealthy desire for freedom, but not the type of freedom anyone would think, but the freedom that was displayed in Armin's book. Eren had nothing to do in life before reading that book. Life was meaningless to him inside of the walls, and he felt empty. But after looking upon the book Armin had brought, he developed a false sense of freedom that brought meaning to his empty world. So he strived for the scenery that was in the book, and of course, he couldn't gain it in the end, but that was what made life so meaningful to him. The reason he couldn't gain it is, well, the world wouldn't let him have it. When he had learned humanity had lived outside the walls, he wasn't curious or excited to find out more things about them, unlike the rest of the Survey Corps, but he was so disappointed. As quoted from chapter 131, it wasn't true freedom, it wasn't what he wanted. That's why he felt so depressed when finally arriving at the ocean. Armin was happy and excited. He wasn't a slave to a false sense of freedom Eren had. To Armin, this was freedom and he loved it. But for Eren, this isn't everything he had desired. He's selfish and wants what he had strived for. But he isn't just an evil, selfish person. He cared about his friends, comrades, and even came to care about his enemies. After living in Mali, he came to understand the people over the sea, but knowing that he'll kill them all, it dealt a huge blow to his mental state. He's sorry that he has to kill them all, as we see him crying out to Ramsey. He can't hold back his emotions anymore and lets them all out. This part of the arc really strengthens Eren's character a ton. It fleshes him out and gives us a better understanding on his thoughts on the rumbling. He's selfish enough to want to create a blank canvas, but selfless enough to help Ramsey out when he's being attacked. It's all in his nature, he can't control this. Even when he tells himself that he doesn't have the right to care about justice to help the boy out, he does anyway. Once again, he doesn't know why, but that's just who he is. Now the freedom spread is tragic. People are dying everywhere, and then an ignorant child is seen in the air screaming that this is freedom, even though it isn't. None of this is like the scenery seen in Armin's book, and none of this is what Eren had strived for. But for seconds, in his childlike state, a young Eren had experienced freedom. And even if it wasn't true, he felt that feeling in the end, which finishes that specific goal. He's done with striving for freedom at that point, so we see him turning back to his empty self, the one that had no clue of the things in Armin's books. The way we see this is how his eyes are closed from now on. One example being his closed eyes at the end of chapter 131, and another in chapter 133 where he literally doesn't have any eyes. The only thing left to do is to let his friends defeat him and become hero figures. It's actually quite amazing how this all connects together. Eren is such a complex and intriguing character that I can't help but love talking about him. You can always find something new about him every time you take another look at the story, and it completely just enhances the plot and his character even more. And even if I've called him a slave multiple times before, that isn't inherently true. He's not truly a slave or a god, he's just a human being. Hanji is dead, Floch is dead, Falco has gained control over his Titan, and the Alliance has made it onto the Founding Titan. The climax of the arc had me worried each month about how the characters will survive and how the story will conclude. The battle was tough to see, as it truly was a difficult challenge to overcome for the Alliance. I can definitely say some parts of the battle's pacing felt a bit weird, and kind of had a few plot armor moments here and there, but it's the narrative parts that helped me love the battle, especially chapters 137 and 138. In chapter 137, we see Armin convince Zeke to love humanity and consider that there is meaning in living in the world. It's a great chapter that gives us Zeke's grand conclusion, with him opening up to the world and realizing that it's beautiful. Zeke finally breaks out of his twisted ideology with the help of Armin's words that ring true in his ears. Now in chapter 138, we see Mikasa achieve acceptance on the whole situation and be able to lay the killing blow on Eren. I had explained earlier that by doing so, she had freed Ymir, as she was used as an example for her. We also see Eren telling Mikasa to be free and forget about him, as she has a long life ahead of herself. The selfish part of him is kept down as he understands other people's feelings and cares about their lives. And finally, in 139, we see him tell Armin that he doesn't want to die and wants to be with Mikasa and others, but due to his actions, he knows that he doesn't deserve to live. I was really sad when reading this part for the first time, but of course his death is the right thing that would happen. 139 gives us more details on Eren's selfish mindset, as seen when Armin decides to ask if he did all of this just to protect his friends, where Eren just doesn't reply and changes the subject. I had already explained the situation between Ymir and Mikasa, so let's skip over that. So like said in this chapter, Eren's head has gotten all messed up. The Founding Titan's powers has made it so that there's no past or future. It all exists at once, which made it so hard for him to watch as his mother had been killed. He chose the one timeline that he's in now that ends the Titan curse and may help his friends over his own mother, which hurt him a lot. You can see the pain in his eyes when he tells Armin some parts of this, especially letting Dinah go past Berthold. Eren didn't simply just kill his mother, he simply chose to sacrifice her as a result of his own death that would come from it would bring greater things. One change in the timeline could change everything, so of course he didn't plan to mess that up. Now for the last parts of 139. The conclusion of this arc was definitely satisfying, but some parts of it felt rushed. Eren's conclusion was great, but the people who turned into Titans in the last chapter turning back already felt a bit abrupt, as we had full panels of them saying goodbye, which were really great panels as well. Another thing is Ymir and Mikasa's connection being involved. If a few more chapters were there to extend this aspect, I think the execution would have been superior to what we got, but still what we got was pretty solid. Everything after all of this felt like the right way to end a story like Attack on Titan, especially the extra pages. Calling back to one of Erwin's quotes back in the Uprising arc, he says that humanity will never stop fighting itself until it shrinks to a size of one or fewer. He was completely right, and the ending shows this. Humanity will never stop fighting, even after Paradis had secured a victory after the rumbling. It's just not realistic, so Isayama takes the more understandable approach and does it correctly, which was good to see. Eren failing to solve world peace makes total sense because, well, that wasn't even his goal. We see years later that another tree has grown that tells us the Titan powers have returned. Probably it's 2000 years into the future. We see a child walking through the forest, which calls back to the children of the forest theme, and making their way to the tree where Titan power resides. The cycle of hatred continues, but as well as the desire to solve it. It's great, and this time the child would attempt to try to find their own solution, which they'll have to push through hell to gain.